Welcome, Pewter Report readers and listeners, to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by our friends over at Celsius. I am John Ledyard at Ledyard NFL Draft on Twitter, obviously of pewterreport.com. And along with me today for this laid-back Thursday show, we're just going to be kicking it casual. Truly, ladies and gentlemen, truly the one and the only Barstool Sports and Going Deep podcast host, Stephen Cheah, with me on the podcast today. Stephen, what is up, my man?
What's up, buddy? I mean, world champs. Can't complain.
I was gonna say, can't complain about that at all. We've been trying to link this up and get you on the podcast for a while now. And man, I'm excited to do it because there is nobody I feel like who is just, you have just soldiered for this team this season, on social media, when it was bad, didn't matter. You were believing the whole way at every game, and that's your outlook, man, huh? You're just positive all the time.
I'm a very positive guy. So I started, me getting integrated with the Bucs and stuff like that has been great, but I started in 2015, and the reason I did it, that's Jameis Winston's first year. We're coming off a 2-14 season, is because, I break down the All-22 on Twitter, is because there was so much negative publicity around the team and just so much bad attention. Now, obviously, they were a bad football team at that point, but when you turn on the tape, not every player is bad. So I just wanted to show the good side of them. And, now there's a lot of good to be found.
That's true. And yeah, you're right. For a while, especially in the national media realm, you didn't hear much good about the Bucs at all. They were kind of not even in the conversation. And so now they're very much in the conversation. We're going to talk today on the show about how much in the conversation they are. We're going to talk about some of the social media ravings that you've had recently, which have been beautiful. We're going to discuss those. And we're also going to talk about the team in the 2020 season and just how it's all come together through your lens and what you've seen. But first, we got to make sure we shout out to our sponsors over at Celsius. Celsius packed lives every day with essential functional energy. Got my Celsius today. Got my orange. I'm going through the orange right now. The orange phase has been good to me. Man, healthy energy accelerates your metabolism, reduces and burns your fat. Man, I can't say enough good things about this. No sugar in Celsius. If you're joining the pod for the first time, you're like, what is Celsius? No sugar in these. It's an energy drink. Tastes like it has the pop and the caffeine boost like a pop or a soda would have. But there's no sugar. There's nothing bad enough for you. It's just great stuff for you. And there's tons of flavors. They're really good. I love the orange, but you've seen us with the orange, the grape. There's tons of ones that you've seen us on the podcast if you've tuned in before. So check out Celsius, Celsius.com. You can check out your store locator and you can see where to get them around you. But if you want to try the variety pack or something like that, go over to Amazon.com and you can check out at Amazon. You can order yourself good old-fashioned variety pack of Celsius and get a bunch of different flavors. Or you can come by the Ledyard household, Stephen, where I've got quite a few Celsius cans. They send them over for promotional reasons. And I'm a high-energy kind of guy naturally. I don't need a lot of the energy drinks, but, man, these have helped pick me up on some tough days during the football season. Not many tough days for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lately, Stephen Cheah. We have talked about the last time that this team lost was that Chiefs game back in week 12. Then it was just a run. So you're the most positive guy in Bucs Twitter, as we already established. Let me ask you this, though. When they lost that game to the Chiefs in week 12 and they went into that bye week, did you really think it was possible that this team wouldn't lose again this season?
This season, in the regular season, yeah, because the schedule at the end of the year was pretty cupcake. We talked about that from, when the schedule was released. It was Minnesota, Atlanta, Detroit, Atlanta. So, Minnesota potentially being a tough game. Nobody really expected the Falcons to be very good. And, same thing with the Lions. So you did expect the team to finish strong. I've been saying all year, this team wasn't built for September, October, or even November. It was built for December, January, and hopefully February. It came to fruition, obviously, but it allowed them to kind of grow together. We saw the team steadily getting better. And then when they signed Antonio Brown, that was a whole other thing, and they had to integrate him into the offense. Like, how is he fitting? That takes Scotty Miller off the field some of the times. He has to learn the playbook. So there's a lot of variables, and just more reps with existing guys like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin had injuries that they're nursing. So just more reps with guys. Gronk started to get his sea legs back. So yeah, they just needed time.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I mean, that was so underrated. I just think people were ready to bury him when they were just like, man, can you not see how many things are timing issues and they're like are cohesion issues? Like, those are the problems here. It's not like everybody just wants to pin things on one player. This guy sucks. This coach sucks. And like, sometimes it just takes time to figure out what works best for all parties. Football is a team game. And I don't know about you, Steve. I feel like nobody wants to recognize that on social media a lot of the time. They're like, wow, if the Bucs aren't elite right away, Tom Brady sucks or he's washed. Or if the Bucs aren't elite with Tom Brady and these guys, like Bruce Arians is horrible. Like, it is a team game. It takes time. And it requires all these moving parts. But we love to individualize the sport, it feels like. And to me, doesn't that just diminish from the beauty of the game that we all really enjoy?
Right. I mean, arguably, Aaron Donald is the best player in football. He's not a champion yet. Maybe he never wins a ring. Dan Marino is one of the best quarterbacks ever, never won a ring. So yeah, it's a team game. It takes 53 guys.
Right. And I wish people saw it that way more often. I know if you're a fan of the Peter Report podcast, people, and you're in here, you've already heard me wax about that before and talk about that before, how much we need to emphasize the fact that it is a team game. Charlie Abrahams do want to mention this, especially with Steven on the podcast, about all 22, because he does some good all 22 breakdowns as well. There is a resource where you can get your hands on all 22 like the coaches and the media get, and it is a subscription. It's called NFL Game Pass. It is a beautiful idea. It is average execution, but it's a really cool product anyway, because it's the best thing that we have out there available to us. So NFL Game Pass, check it out. There is a subscription. You have to pay for it. I think it's like $100 for a year.
It's $100. It's $100 a year. They reduce it when it gets later in the season, but it's $100 for the year. John, John, you're also an all-22 warrior like myself. Do you remember week 1? It was a hostage situation. Like, the NFL typically is going to release the all-22 for regular Joes like John and myself. Monday evening, sometimes like as late as Tuesday morning, Tuesday around lunchtime at the worst. This year, week 1, I think we bled into like Wednesday really late night, or maybe even Thursday morning. And
it was late night Wednesday, I think, and I was like, if it's gonna be like this all season, man, I'm out.
There was one guy who, for every hour it wasn't released, was releasing a current coach's playbook.
Oh, that's right. Justice. Yes, I remember that. He was releasing real NFL playbooks.
I have Bruce Arians' playbook right now.
Because of that. So because it was worth it.
Yes.
Yeah, I did actually have his playbook, and I have been meaning to study it. I'll be studying it a lot this offseason, especially, but that is pretty funny. I mean, it was one of those days where it was like, dude, if it's going to be like this all year, because my content is planned around it. Like, my column drops on Tuesdays, and it's literally an all-22 column, so we dodged a bullet there for sure. Okay, let's talk about just injuries with this Bucs team, because they did stay a crazy healthy, but also Vita Vea was one that, obviously him coming back. So, again, being optimistic is part of it, but like, could you have seen Vita Vea coming back and like rejoining the efforts for this team? Like, we had asked Bruce Arians, and he had just kind of quickly ruled it out. Bruce is a sly dog sometimes, but man, I did not see him coming back at all.
So I was devastated after the Chicago game, not because it was like a bad loss and I like streamed it with a bunch of people at Barstool, and it was, kind of a humiliating game, especially with Tom Brady with the 4 fingers at the end. But the Vita Vea injury, I mean, Vita Vea is, easily my favorite guy to watch on tape, just because he just destroys people. So knowing that we wouldn't, get to watch that, but have that on the field was devastating. Pro Football Talk or Pro Football Doc, shout out to that guy. I asked him that night to analyze it by video, and he said this is a compound fracture. He could probably be back by the Super Bowl. Wow. So I put out some feelers in the organization to just say, hey, is this possible? Like, is it possible he returns? And I got a pretty standard answer back, just like, he's on IR, like he's done. So I was like, all right, didn't expect it at all. But then when we hear, it was going into the Green Bay game, I believe, it was like, hey, he might practice. Reach out again to a few people, and not even some associated with the Bucs and some not. And the answer I got was like, it's gamesmanship. Like, he's not playing. He played 33 snaps that game. I mean, his his first 2 snaps that he was on the field, the Bucs got sacked. So, I mean, he is a huge difference maker. You know, he's not a sexy stats guy, and he's never going to be. But, I mean, he pushes the pocket and doesn't let quarterbacks step up, and that is a huge problem for the opposing team.
Oh, yeah, when you've got guys like they do coming off the edge for sure, man. Unbelievable insurance policy to have. Vita Vea kind of just waiting in the wings for this team. Another place you can get a great insurance policy is at Briar Greaves. What a year for the insurance world. A record number of named storms at more than 30 storms, flooding in addition to wildfires, and not to mention the pandemic. With the commercial property and homeowners rate increase across the industry due to these catastrophes, Briar Greaves Agency has numerous carriers and options to help new and existing clients that are affected by these increases. Personal and commercial auto insurance is another line of business that Briar Greaves Insurance can help with, shopping through carriers such as Progressive, MetLife, Safeco, and Allstate, to name a few. The folks at Briar Greaves Insurance are also, most importantly, big fans of the Buccaneers and proud sponsors of the Pewter Report podcast on pewterreport.com. Visit briargreavesinsurance.com or call 813-876-4166. That's 813-876-4166 today. You can get some of the rate droppage that Scott Reynolds and Mark Cook of pewterreport.com are both enjoying as well. So, yeah, you mentioned Vita Vea, man. Him coming back was unbelievable. I think at that point, I was like, once I knew he was playing in the Green Bay game, and I already picked, that game. Once I knew he was playing in the Green Bay game and it was for sure happening, and he was getting like actual snaps, not just like 5 snaps or whatever, but he was actually able to play and be effective. I was like, yeah, I don't think they're going to lose again. And it wasn't just because of him, but it just sometimes, and this is maybe because you grew up on these sports movies and stuff, but like, don't you sometimes just get a feeling about a team that there's a little magic going around and they just are on a roll and they can't be solved. They can't be explained or quantified, Steven. It just exists. It is.
So I am like you in that going into the Super Bowl, the Kansas City game, I knew they were going to win. Like there was no doubt in my mind they were going to win that game. The Saints game was the game I was most nervous about. The Packers game, I had a good feeling that we would win. But the Saints game, it's like, all right, these guys are our boogeymen. Like we cannot beat them. And, everything kind of came together. People forget we were losing until Antoine Winfield forces that fumble on Jared Cook, and then kind of the whole game changes. But, yeah, the Vita Vea coming back was certainly huge.
Oh, my gosh. It was huge, and it really did. It felt like at that point it was like, yeah, this might be just kind of like a magical season. Like, not that isn't to say like the Bucs were carried by some mysterious force or something, but sometimes a team gets in a zone. And, obviously they made mistakes even in the playoffs and they overcame those. But sometimes a team gets in the zone and it's like nothing can shake their confidence. You saw the Saints that at points in that game, and especially late in the game, they realized they couldn't do it with Drew Brees. Like they couldn't do it. Really, they couldn't do it against the way the Bucs were playing defense. You realize late in the game, Green Bay, I thought if they hadn't kicked that field goal, it might have been interesting. But again, I felt like there were points in that game, even in the first half, where they're at the touchdown at the end of the first half where they looked at each other and they were just like, we can't do this. You know what I mean? And the Chiefs, obviously, like I think that second half when they had to kick a field goal and then the Bucs went down and scored, made it 28-9. It was really like, the clips they show him Mahomes on the sideline, he's just like I've never seen him look like that. Have you ever seen Mahomes look like that in a game before?
I heard a stat that, like Amazon Web Services and stuff like that, like tracks player movement. And Mahomes ran he obviously didn't rush for this many total yards, but he ran for, I think, 497 yards in the game, just going side to side, back and forth. It's just standard dropbacks. I don't know what the average is, maybe like 100 yards because you're dropping back out of shotgun and things like that, and out of under center, and obviously running a little bit. But he was running for his life the entire game. And Ndamukong Suh played huge. I think he was credited with 1.5 sacks, but he was everywhere.
Right. Yeah. It was absolutely a huge and critical performance. There's no question about it, to be able to rattle him up as much as they did. I really haven't seen Patrick Mahomes look like that in a game before. So it was pretty crazy. Do you want to just touch on a couple questions really quick? I see people always talking about if the Bucs lose Godwin, it's a must assign AB. Okay. Here's my touching on that. And Steven, I'll let you say it too, but Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown might both play receiver, but they play very different roles and they do very different things. And Chris Godwin is a very unique player. He's in the Larry Fitzgerald role. You've heard them say that before. He's a very unique player and a very unique role in this offense. Antonio Brown doesn't do any of that, of the blocking and the insert blocks and the being able to move in motion and come in as a wing and all that kind of stuff. Like, he doesn't do that kind of stuff. So you would have to get someone to do it. It wouldn't be Antonio Brown. It would be Tyler Johnson if Godwin were to be gone in this hypothetical. Now, let me ask you this, Jay, before I get to maybe answering the rest of this. I want to ask you this about Tyler Johnson. He's a 5th-round pick. Did you have feelings about Tyler Johnson coming into the draft, and how did you feel about the pick and then watching him throughout the season, especially keeping in mind that he may eventually, probably not this year, but maybe in 2022, be potentially a replacement for Godwin?
I wasn't a big Tyler Johnson guy going into the draft because he seemed pretty duplicative. I mean, we didn't have Antonio Brown at the time, but he seemed pretty duplicative for what we had looking at Arians' offense. He prefers like a lot of speed on the outside, and Tyler Johnson is not a burner by any means.
Right.
So I know Chris Godwin was coming up. I know that they were prioritizing an extension for him before the season. I don't know if his value has changed a lot. He didn't have a great postseason. He had a lot of drops in the playoffs that they overcame. He is a very unique player in the fact that he is such a good run blocker, really good route runner, and typically has very dependable hands outside of the last couple games. That being said, the Bucs could have, with the news coming out today about the salary cap floor, with it being $180 million, it will be higher than that, but how much higher? Like, if they're going to lose one high-priced guy between Levante David and Ndamukong Suh, Chris Godwin, Shaq Barrett, the easiest of those guys to replace, in my opinion, would be Chris Godwin, just because you have Tyler Johnson, who is in that mold. Again, and to your point, AD and Chris Godwin, they're not the same type of receiver, so you wouldn't replace one or the other. But Tyler Johnson's not a bad fallback option. We saw him make clutch catch after clutch catch. I mean, you talked about the whole postseason. The play of the postseason is probably the Scotty Miller touchdown at the end of the first half. But if you think about number 2, at least on offense, Tyler Johnson, 3rd and 11 or 3rd and 10 against New Orleans, tie game. I think it was 20 all or 23 all at that time.
20 all, I think,
maybe the best catch of the season. On a back shoulder play by Tom Brady on a 3rd down with, I think it was a 3rd or maybe it was an early 4th quarter at that point, but it was a huge play, and that changed the momentum of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a massive play, and he made a couple of throughout the year. I mean, really, I thought showed himself well. Too many drops, but I mean, I think that's something that's pretty normal for young players. I think even Chris Godwin as a rookie, that was probably the most he'd struggled with drops until we've seen this season, the playoffs. There was a struggle. Now, the Bucs aren't going to lose Godwin.
Tyler Johnson note. Have you ever thought about what would happen if Tyler Johnson wasn't wearing like a XXL undershirt against the Packers?
That's so funny you say that.
Was egregiously large. To the fact,
huge.
And to his credit, like if he's wearing, maybe he wears like a size large shirt. If he wears a size large, that's not getting called because they're not seeing it. It's not hanging out by enough. But his undershirt was so ridiculously big that the defender almost had no choice but to grab it, in which case it's an obvious foul.
It's true. It was like the greatest extension of their season, to be honest. It was just this guy grabbing his jersey, and it was pretty funny. I wonder if he would have – he got grabbed so early in the route. I think it made people think the ball was uncatchable. I don't think we'll ever – he got grabbed initially. Then the part that was obvious was the shirt pull. That was several yards, by the way. So it is impossible to say. I know people just like to say it because they like to rip on refs, and I get it. But it's impossible to say where he would have been in relation to the ball had he not been grabbed so early in the route. And then again, for several yards, kind of written on the back of his jersey. So it was an egregious one. It was obviously the right call, but you're right. That was definitely a clincher, was him having that jersey in that situation. Now, as far as Chris Godwin, I do think he will get the franchise tag, and that he's the easiest one to tag out of everybody. And so I think he'll end up getting that tag. And again, as we've talked about on the show, it probably isn't something that he ends up regretting a lot either, even though players don't like to play on the tag, because next year the cap's probably going to bump up. And if he has a huge year in Bucs offense, which if he hadn't missed like over 4 games this season, he might have had an even, he could have been pushing 1,400 yards or something like that. With the whole offseason, he could be looking at an unbelievable year in this offense. And if that's the case, it's not out of the question that Chris Godwin ends up becoming, again, people say highest paid receiver in the league. Like he's not the best receiver in the league. That doesn't matter. The market resets all the time. So if he's next up to get paid, he could get paid. That contract could last like 2 days. Remember, Kirk Cousins was at one point highest paid quarterback. Well, everybody else he was happened to be next in line to get the big contract, and then other people got it and passed him up. And so that's what I mean when I say that for Chris Godwin. He will be in that conversation for much more money, could be next year. So it could be a situation where the tag works well for both. So yeah, good stuff. I do want to touch on, Steven, this you've been on a rampage on Twitter, and like it's so funny to me because like you're the nicest dude and you're like the friendliest dude, and like but then you will just like hammer people on Twitter out of nowhere, and I freaking love it. I think it's so funny. But this was probably the most surprising thing. Before we get to like some of you going after, this was an interesting tweet. You said the Buccaneers are tied for the second most Super Bowls since the turn of the century with 2. The clubs they are tied with, Steelers, Ravens, and Giants, are all considered NFL royalty. The Bucs have earned their place as an elite organization and deserve that distinction too. What's most impressive about this tweet is that obviously if you're not a Bucs fan, your inclination would be like, nah, they're the losingest franchise ever. But you avoided getting ratioed on this tweet. I couldn't believe it. Even if you were right or wrong, you avoided getting ratioed. I thought that was incredibly impressive. The Cheah Hive is strong with that tweet. It has like 1,800 likes. That's amazing.
The people that are actually ripping me the most for that tweet are Ravens fans because they're like, don't ever compare our two franchises. And honestly, NFL royalty is probably not the best phrasing because the Ravens are like a fairly new franchise. They're what, like 1996? So yeah. I don't think they're NFL royalty. But when objectively I'm looking at the league and seeing how teams are built from the owner to the GM to the coach to the roster, I mean, the Ravens, as a Steelers fan, you might not like to do this, but, the Steelers are right up there with them. They're one of the elite organizations in football. And, when you look at the championships and, Saints fans get mad about this because, they're, huddled in all their division title banners when they go to sleep. But the Saints only won 1 Super Bowl, especially since the turn of the century. Like recently, like the Saints are a very good organization, but they don't get the job done. Like you're not measured on division championships. You're measured on Super Bowls. And then when you look back at the last, 22 years, 22 Super Bowls since the year 2000, like it's the Patriots and then it's everybody else in as far as like the second tier, which are the Bucs, the Giants, the Ravens, and the Steelers. And then it's all just like 1-win franchises. So like you look at Kansas City and they probably will win another one again, like with Patrick Mahomes. But like Green Bay didn't win another one with Aaron Rodgers. The Rams, won way long ago with Kurt Warner. They didn't win again. A lot of really, really good teams with really, really good quarterbacks are not seeing sustained greatness. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, 1 ring. Like it's incredible. And just to think that, the Bucs did this with Tom Brady with 1 season, has more Super Bowls with the Bucs than Russell Wilson has as many Super Bowls as Russell Wilson does with the Seahawks. And, Russell Wilson, he's never got an MVP vote. Like he's America's darling. Like everyone loves him. He's perfect. He's married to Sierra. He's this great player, but the Super Bowl is so hard to achieve. There's only 1 a year. And, Tom Brady is the best at it. And he came to this organization. This organization was built correctly with a lot of blue chip players that weren't necessarily popular picks at the time. Like I actually loved the Vita Vea pick, but I knew he was a very unpopular pick. People wanted Derwin James, hometown guy, a sexy pick, big hitter. But I mean, he has played 1 full season really in his 3 seasons. Just a lot. Devin White, I'll be the first to admit, I wasn't on board with that pick because I wanted Josh Allen. I thought edge rusher was a need. Yeah. Jason Light obviously knew what he was doing. He picked Devin White, and they had Shaq Barrett, who is more than capable and an even better player than Josh Allen right now. So they've done a really good job through the draft, especially the past 3 drafts, in building up this championship core. And Tom Brady realized that, and that's why he came.
Right. So you can kind of make the case that they should be considered an elite franchise, and Super Bowl titles are a huge deal. I mean, this is we are talking about like a team with 2 Super Bowl titles now. That is hard for people to wrap their minds around because the Bucs are also the losingest franchise in the league in terms of percentage over the course of their. So how do you justify or like wrestle those two, opposite ends of the spectrum when you say like they should be up there with some of the NFL royalty or even, with some of the better franchises in the league, they should be thought of that way. When you say that, are you talking about the Bucs period over existence? Or are you talking about this current Bucs franchise is headed in that direction of all these other top franchises in the league?
In my opinion, they're there already. And I'm not talking about, current, but if we're talking about today, whatever it is, February 18th, February 19th, like they are an elite franchise. They have a roster loaded with blue chip players. They are in good salary cap position. They do have a great quarterback. They do have a culture with winning. When you look at the players that they have, Gronk, Tom Brady, Jason Pierre-Paul, like these guys have multiple Super Bowl rings and are championship guys. So yes, I'm talking about the right now. Like when I would put the February 18th, 2021 Buccaneers as far as class of organization right next to the Ravens, right next to the Steelers. The Giants are considered NFL royalty. I don't think they're at that level right now. Traditionally, they are kind of one of the blue bloods of the NFL, and I think the Bucs are kind of right up there at the top of the league.
I actually really agree with you on that point. I don't know if I'd say like NFL royalty just because of the past it's been, but right now, if you're talking right now, I mean, I think that Jason Licht's one of the best GMs in the game. I think he's been one of the best GMs in the game for the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, to be honest, because that 2016 draft, I think it was. Was that 2016 was the bad one, right? 2017 was OJ Howard. Howard, and then
but
I think OJ Howard's going to be really good if he ever gets to stay on the field. I mean, in 2018, he looked like he's about to be a star. Then 2019 comes along and he's Bruce Arians' offense as a tight end. Good luck, man. You have to block defensive ends in duo. You run way different routes than you ran before. You don't play out in the slot or anything like that as much. Like it is a totally different ball game. And then he was hurt during that season too, and he was like behind on learning the offense. Then at the end of that year, he started to break out. He looked great at the beginning of this year, but then he hits his Achilles. And so I really think OJ Howard is still gonna be a stud in the NFL. I'm one of those people holding out, Stephen. Negative town on me. He worries you.
He worries me because he's a guy, when you look at that year he had, I guess it was 2018, where he kind of broke out. He scored half of his plays. He scored half his touchdowns on one play. And it's like a very fluke play that Dirk Cutter ran all the time, where he's, a tight end on the strong side and basically pretends to like fall down and crosses right in front of the linebacker, and then basically goes uncovered. And he has the speed and, can catch. So he can make that play. But as far as like, if there is a guy on him, I am not confident he's going to make that play, especially when we saw last year, I'm not trying to be a Jameis Winston apologist because I'm one of the farthest things from that, but a couple of Jameis Winston turnovers are just passes to OJ Howard that he just drops or hits him in the head, or he tries to catch missed catches and tries to catch behind his back, and it's just like I just don't think. I think he's got I think he actually has a little bit of the yips, if I'm being honest. Like he has everything that you'd want, and he was advertised as a much better blocker than he is, but I'm not a big OJ Howard.
I thought last year he started looking like a good blocker again, and he's making some plays.
Certainly had moments, and I mean there were
that
times,
Broncos catch. Ooh, that Broncos catch got me excited.
There were times, Cam Brate, not traditionally a good blocker. There were times this year where he was a very good blocker. So there's certainly flashes, and there are great flashes with OJ, but I haven't seen it consistently enough. But I know that Tom Brady loves him. And, certainly, we saw Cam Brate kind of flourish in that number 2 receiving tight end role, assuming Gronk is back. Hopefully, OJ Howard can do similar things. So, certainly rooting for the guy, but,
it wasn't your favorite pick. Sure. No, I mean, you're right. Consistency has to be something, and staying on the field can't be good if you're not out there. It's not his fault. I'm saying that he's gotten hurt. I'm just saying it's hard for us to justify a pick if player's not present. But that draft, I do think Jason the Justin Evans and Kendall Beckwith losing those guys are like weird career-ending injuries after they looked impressive early on, just kind of unlucky stuff. But this tweet by you was funny to me as well too. And you said in highlight, Roto Pat, I forget his actual Pat Doherty or something like that is his real name. He ranks every year the GMs in the league, and he ranked Jason Light coming into the 2020 season, mind you. He ranked Jason Light 25th out of 32 GMs in the NFL, one spot behind Bill O'Brien. You said, not on my watch, buddy. Are you getting away with this? You think if people going to forget? They ain't going to forget, Roto Pat. So you came back and you said, hey, what's up with this? Like, maybe this is a bit too low. You went about it nicely, and everything. But this isn't so much about Roto Pat, but just going into the 2020 season, like, I mean, okay, if you're talking 2 years ago, or maybe, I don't know if that low, but there was significant, when Jason Light got his extension, there were a lot of questions at that point. Like, not a lot had been proven regarding Jason Light. I mean, it was pretty early for Carlton Davis and it wasn't looking like he was looking this season for sure. Just a lot of those picks. I mean, again, at that point, they passed on. Derwin was coming off that amazing year, and Vita Vea had a pretty ordinary, rookie first year. And so things weren't looking that hot at that point in time. The Glazers believed in him. They gave him the extension. So at that point in time, if you had ranked him 25th, I would have understood where you were coming from, honestly. Like, I was pretty skeptical of that signing by them. And now at that point, I wasn't covering the team, so I didn't know him or anything like that. So they had a better vantage point than I do, and they always, by the way, have a better vantage point than we do when it comes to coaches and GMs. Yep. We don't have all 22 access to coaches and GMs like the other people do. So we always have some ignorance there, whether we like it or not. But you came back, and this guy said for the 2020 season, Steven, like, to me, that just seems like he'd already proven some good things at that point in time.
Right. So a friend of mine who used to work for the organization sent this to me and was just like, what a crazy thing. And then Greg Allman tweeted, and somebody actually asked me, like, why do you have such a problem with this now? You didn't say anything then. And what I said then was, the blurb about Light is written as if Brady's career is already over, which is very odd. It's like the signing lost in points. The author also praises Les Snead, who's the Rams GM, ranked 16th for eating a bunch of dead cap of contracts he signed guys to. So I'm not putting much stock in this. I went back and actually read the whole article. His number one GM is Bill Belichick, who's one of the worst GMs, I feel. Yeah. Like, his coaching overcomes so much, but when you look at his roster, it is terrible. I realize they had a bunch of opt-outs this year, but overall, like, Bill Belichick being the number one GM was maybe a worse take than Jason Light being the 25th.
I'm not trying to rip on just that list, because what he's trying to do is probably something that's assigned by editors, and he's just trying to make the most of it. But I took issue with it a couple of years ago when Kevin Colbert, who's easily one of the best GM. I know I'm a Steeler guy, but come on, like, Kevin Colbert, he's been there for 20 years, crushing anyways, easily one of the best GMs in the league. And he was like ranked 13th or 14th. I was like, how is there like what in there were guys getting fired that
Bill
week.
Bill O'Brien ranked over Jason Light. Bill O'Brien just traded Jeffrey Hopkins for a running back.
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, the recency of this blew my mind, because it was like he just went out and signed Tom Brady in free agency, and I think at that point he traded for Rob Gronkowski too. Like, he had done all this after finishing that defense second half of the season. Those young corners, everybody looked like studs. It was like nobody paid attention to the Bucs last year and the way they finished the season, by the way. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
You had Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis, Sean Murphy-Bunting, and NFL.com is ranking them as a 32nd cornerback group in the league. Even if you thought those guys weren't going to take a jump, 32nd in the league, there's some horrible cornerback rooms in the league.
Freeland, I'm coming for you.
That's going to be you're going to line up that tweet next. That's coming. You've got it scheduled.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's a Stephen Cheah revenge tour right now. I got all the receipts. I'm coming after everybody.
You got Steve Smith. You got some people.
Steve Smith already got it, but he's going to be coming up a bunch more. Steve Smith, I mean, as a Bucs fan forever, like, I hate Steve Smith. I've never hated a player more than I hate Steve Smith. And the fact that he's in a position of an analyst right now on national TV is fine. Like, good for him. He had a great career. Happy for you. But if he's going to come out and rip the Bucs and say that we're going to be awful in the playoffs, we're going to get washed, and then we go win the Super Bowl, he's definitely getting it. He doesn't have Twitter, but I want to make him sign up for Twitter.
He doesn't have Twitter. He deleted. I remember he used to search his name when he was on Twiter. That's interesting.
Really?
I might have to let him know. Yeah, he used to back in the day. Yeah, I didn't know he deleted Twitter, but that's funny. Yeah, people used to tweet, because he's not a very good analyst, and he messes up everything. I mean, names, players, details, facts, like, all the time. And people used to get him when he was first starting out, and then he's kind of got up since then. But I think he deleted social. But here's a good question. We've got, how impressive is what Brady did? And we appreciate the super chat from Big Head Ted. He says, how impressive is what Brady did, not only statistical but team wise? Do you think any other quarterback could have done this? That second part's a good question. I mean, obviously impressive. I'll add this to it, and I'll let you say. But to me, like, the most impressive thing about what Brady did is that this isn't an offense that's easy for a quarterback. Like, it's not like, and I think Ryan Tannehill's a good player, but like the Titans offense built a scheme that Ryan Tannehill could win in, you know what I mean? And there are offenses that do that. You know, they ask play action and RPO, and they do a lot of different stuff, you know, quick completions, get the ball out. You know, they simplify the game plan and they rely on run after the catch guys, even like the Colts to a degree. Like Philip Rivers clearly didn't have it at this point in his career. And so the Colts to offense was almost all horizontal stuff, get the ball out quick. He hardly got sacked or touched all season. You know, that's what he had to do. But this offense, I mean, I don't feel like they did anything to make it like easy. Oh, you're 43, we're going to make it easy. It just didn't feel like that all season to me.
Yeah, and I think what happened over the bye was that, you know, they're coming off losses to the Rams or the Saints. I think they beat Carolina right after that, but then they lost to the Rams and then the Chiefs. And really, you know, we're not playing very good football. And then the historically late Week 13 bye, which I was a little nervous about going into the year because, you know, injuries and stuff can pile up. You don't want to have kind of a mid-season slump, but it really did them a huge favor because they went back and they've said this on the record, but like they self-scouted a lot. They changed a lot of the offense. They went a lot more two tight end, added a lot more motion, stuff Tom Brady was a little bit more comfortable with. And, you know, we see the results. So they just really started clicking right after that bye.
Yeah, it's true. It was they did do some things better, and that did help. But for a lot of the season, even getting to 7-5, I mean, he had to lead some comebacks. You know, there had to be a lot of impressive play. And I honestly think Week 1 was one of Tom Brady's best games. I think because of all the pass interference penalties, people didn't really realize that. But to me, when I think back to the impressive performance, you know, remember Mike Evans messed up that route and the first interception. Yep. I know the second interception happened. I think that it was more than just Brady on that throw. I don't think it was a good throw, but I know people focused on 2 picks after the game and a pick 6, especially coming off of Jameis Winston. I think people whack and watch that game with a clean lens. They would see, I mean, for a first game with no offseason, I mean, Brady was making some throws in that game. Remember, there were like 5 or 6 pass interference penalties on perfect throws. I mean, perfect throws.
First
drive,
we go right down the field and score on, you know, the vaunted Saints.
Yep. I mean, I think, and again, I just think that I think his season from start to finish was unbelievable. Now, do you think any other quarterback could have done it? That's the thing. I don't really know. I mean, definitely would have been only the greats. You know, Peyton did it obviously eventually in Denver. You know, but at that point, even when he won the Super Bowl, clearly wasn't him. It was, you know, he's clearly getting carried. I think obviously Brady was not carried this season. Even the haters are having a hard time, I think, saying that with a straight face. I don't know. Could any other quarterback have done it, do you think?
I mean, if you look at like kind of the rare air quarterbacks and you think about the, you know, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, like maybe, but like what's so different about, you know, if they'd done it, it would have been a different path. Like, I don't think it takes kind of the same path, but, yeah, with Brady, he just instilled that, and Bruce Arians has talked about this, like that sense of winning. And just like, you know, texting the guys all at 11 o'clock at night every day before the Super Bowl, like, we will win. So like instilling that type of winning mentality, I think is invaluable. And, you know, however long he plays, if it's 1 more year here, if it's 3 more years here, if it's, you know, 10 more years here, you know, what's going to be great is that he's kind of instilled this in the guys that we have so they can take this beyond his, you know, however many seasons he's here.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate the $5 super chat from Lawrence Lowe. They say, do you think the Bucs could sign Aaron Rodgers after Brady in 2022? Oh, buddy, field this one. What do you think of this, Steven? Have you thought about this at all?
I have thought about it, and I definitely think it's a possibility. But I don't think Tom Brady – I think Tom Brady is going to be the first Buccaneers starting quarterback to sign an extension with the team.
Wow.
I'd be surprised.
That is funny.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat because it's never happened.
Right.
But the starting quarterback has never signed an extension. I think Brady will. I mean, he's playing so good right now. He obviously had so much fun this year. You know, we obviously can't count 8 before it happens, but they'll certainly be in contention, you'd think, assuming, you know, the majority of the team's healthy. They should be a playoff team next year, especially with the division. And And then, how does that play out? You got Tom Brady and the Bucs again in the dance. So, you're just going to keep hoping. So Tom Brady can stay as long as he likes.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm guessing the same as you. I think Tom Brady plays 2 more seasons, if I'm guessing. It's a guess. Aaron Rodgers could play 2 more seasons in Green Bay. And then it could be, okay, Jordan Love's 3 years into his deal. He was a first-round pick, so we have the 4th year, and then we have the 5th-year option if we want it. We need to figure out who this guy is. Yep. Maybe at that point, Aaron Rodgers has a Tom Brady-like year, like had in New England. And they're like, we don't know if we think maybe it might be time to turn the page. And maybe then he comes to Tampa Bay. That, to me, is the most likely scenario. Aaron Rodgers is the MVP of the league. I mean, for him, I just don't think I think it's going to take 2 years for the Packers to move on. I think at that point they will, though. And I think the Bucs will use those destinations most if they keep this roster intact. They keep re-signing these guys. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see for sure. Ness brings up a good point. With a full OTA preseason, et cetera, Manning still took 2 seasons to win it. Again, winning it in the COVID year in the first year, I think only Brady could have done that. Certainly the only one we've seen do anything like that, man. I mean, I'm not ruling out down the road that somebody like Mahomes or Watson could do something like that, or Rodgers even. But, man, this season was unbelievable to do what he did. I mean, especially, again, in a Bruce Arians system that is tough for quarterbacks. Sustain good play in the first season. His numbers in a first season are just ridiculous compared to other, Arians quarterbacks in their first season. I don't know if you've been able to see him or not, but it's been fun.
That was all of Bucs Twitter last year before free agency. Jameis Winston. It's first year in a Bruce Arians system. They always throw a ton of picks.
Not 30.
Yeah.
Did Tom Brady get strip sacked all season? Like, I was trying to remember this. I think he may have gotten the ball knocked out, and then he just fell right on it right away. Week 1, I know Carl Granderson, I think, knocked the ball out, but then he grabbed it right away. So he definitely didn't lose the strip sack all year, because his only fumble that he has is the Ronald Jones against, I think it was the Panthers. Ronald Jones missed the handoff. That's technically credited to Brady. I'm pretty sure that's the only lost fumble he has on the season.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I feel like he definitely was sacked. I feel like Donovan Smith was beat on an inside move. Maybe that was against the Saints.
It was.
But
it's just crazy. That kind of – I mean, he's not a run away from pressure guy. He just – within this type of space, he's moving like that.
Yeah.
We could marvel at him all day, to be honest. All right, last question I'll ask you before we get off the podcast. You are optimistic, Steven, but I have to ask you about these free agents that the Bucs have coming up, because there's a lot of them. Shaq Barrett, Levante David, Chris Godwin, and Ndamukong Suh, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown, Leonard Fournette, Ryan Suck, guys especially. Of the key free agents for this team, who do you feel really strongly about they're going to be back for sure? You're putting money on they're going to be back. They're going to be more than one guy too.
I mean, based on the list you gave me, the one guy that's definitely going nowhere, definitely, is Ryan Suckup. There's no way Jason Light and the front office is going back to days of Kyle Brinza and these guys. So that's certainly not going to happen. The Bucs are in a good position salary cap wise. I think they are going to have to restructure a bunch of guys. Apparently, Mike Evans was saying, just take the money from me, and we'll make it happen. I know,
which is funny because Evans' contract actually isn't. There's nothing really they can do to make it better. It's already a great contract. They've already
done it so many times.
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically he's still offering with no understanding of what they'd have to do to his deal to they basically have to just scrub it and give him a new deal, which isn't going to happen. So yeah.
I know that they were prioritizing Chris Godwin and Levante David before the season. The pandemic kind of messed up everything for contracts because you didn't want to know what the cap was going to be this year. In the beginning of the season, it seemed like games were going to be postponed or canceled, and maybe we're going to build in some type of buffer for the postseason. So I would think that hasn't changed. That those two guys are going to be the priority. I think that Shaq Barrett certainly, he didn't really put up the numbers that he did last season, but as far as pressures and hurries, I think he was second in the league in that. So I certainly think he's a guy that they're going to prioritize bringing back. I'm really interested to see. Gronk has already said he's going to take a couple weeks, but he's probably going to be back. Mm-hmm. What is his contract going to be like? Because he was, I believe, a $10 million or $10.5 million guy this year. Mm-hmm. Is he going to take a very low salary? I'm not sure. So it'll be interesting. But the guys that I'm very confident will be back, in order, I guess, would be Ryan Suckup, Levante David. I think he's going to work out like a pretty cap-friendly deal. Chris Godwin, and then Shaq Barrett.
Yeah, I agree with all those guys for sure. And I do think Gronkowski will be back just because he's already kind of said, like, I want to be back here and, like, I want to win with this team. It's hard for me to say, like, Gronk would come out of retirement, play 1 year, win a ring, have all this stuff going for him. I don't think he spent, like, $1 of his NFL money, he said. That's all he's spent all just so he's like all so I don't even know what would matter to him. I mean, yeah, you're right. Bucs are probably only going to be able to pay him $4 million. He definitely gets more money if he hits the market. I mean, there's no he can still block, he can still catch. He's the one guy that had more yards left on the field, I felt like, by Brady missed throws than anybody. I mean, he's the only guy I felt like. Think about all the overthrows he had. If you go back through his incompletions in the season, check it out on All 22 sometime. Like, this dude could have had like 1,000 yards this year, and people would be singing such a different tune if Brady would have connected with him on a few more balls. But yeah, I really think he's still probably one of the best tight ends in the league. He could make bank on the open. I mean, I just don't think he cares. I think he just wants to come back, party in Tampa. His mom's down here, I think. I think he just wants to win another ring.
Play with any quarterback except Tom, so that really limits his options.
Right. It's Tampa Bay or bust pretty much. So I think he'll be back too. I think Sue again, he is married with twins, on the way. And so it's like, I was actually excited, but I was surprised. He was like, oh yeah, I'm going to come back. No question. Jason Light was on the pod last week and he was telling us like, oh yeah, we've already talked with Ndamukong Suh. Like, he wants to come back. So he's not ready to retire. He wants to keep playing. So probably another 1 year deal for him. I think he'll be back. But yeah, Antonio Brown, what do you think? Like, going into this offseason, what do you think is going to happen with Antonio Brown?
So it's tough because he definitely wants to get paid. Like, that was his priority when he went to the Raiders, and they ripped up his deal from the Steelers and gave him a new one. That obviously didn't work out. He's gone on record saying he just wants to play with Tom. It's going to be tough because, like, we're not going to be able to pay him that much money. So if he wants to stay here, great. He'd have to do it kind of on the cheap. If he wants to go get paid elsewhere, it'll be interesting to see what type of deal he gets, because I can see him getting like one of these 2 or 3 year deals that's kind of backloaded and not a ton of guarantees that they can basically void after 1 year. But, is he going to want to do that? I mean, to his credit, like, he played, great towards the end of the season. But when they signed him, they talked, Bruce Arians and Jason Light both talked about him as an insurance policy. So, he is, like I'd mentioned before, like kind of duplicative with the type of like speed skills that Evans and Godwin have, but just kind of a worse blocker. He obviously has great chemistry with Tom Brady, and they did, some great things towards the end of the year. But, Tyler Johnson also did too. So with that type of opportunity, could he kind of step into that role? Maybe. So I would like to have Antonio Brown back. You like to see him doing well, and I think he has his best chance to do well as a person and on the field with Tom Brady. So hopefully he's back, but I can't imagine we're shelling out big bucks for him.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, and we're on the same page with Leonard. We don't think it's happening. It could happen, but probably not.
He loves like Tom Brady and loves Gronk. But I mean, he was a former top 5 pick. He was getting paid a lot of money. And now he's getting like very little money, and he was on a 1 year deal. So, yeah, I mean, especially after his playoff run, I would expect him to cash in somewhere. I mean, that's what happens when you win the Super Bowl. You lose some guys, they get big deals. I would expect him to be one of them. I don't think we're going to pay big money for a running back, especially with, Keyshawn Vaughn apparently, playing like, busting out like gangbusters, kind of behind the scenes.
Let's hope.
I mean, that's what they said.
Lenny. Yeah, that's what they said. We'll see. I mean, when he got in games, it was a roller coaster. We'll see. So hopefully.
What was the game he was very good? Maybe it was Detroit. I think it was the Detroit game, and it was a blowout, so he got a lot of time. But he looked great.
Every time he touched the ball, he got like 8 yards. It was incredible.
Yeah, he looked awesome. Yeah. But yeah, like he has the reputation for having very good hands, but our entire running backs room this entire year was very bad at catching the football, like horrifically bad. Right. I would expect them to address that in the draft, hopefully with someone with, reliable hands. Maybe in the first round.
Yeah, that's what And if you haven't heard, go back and check out our podcast from yesterday. Scott and I talked about the draft a good bit on that one, and we talked about our 7-round mock draft we posted on Pure Report. Went through a couple possible running back options early in the draft. for the Bucs. I know not all Bucs fans are on board with that. We will move to other positions as well and be addressing those too. Long off season, we got plenty to talk about. It's Lombardi Lenny now. Yes, it is. I'm sorry, Raymond, for not saying playoff Lenny, but it actually is Lombardi Lenny now. He's rebranded. So if you are interested, if you love this podcast, first of all, go to Pewter Report TV and hit the subscribe button and check out the Pewter Report podcast. We are live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, every single all the 4 of those weekdays. So make sure you hit the bell and get the notifications. But also, if you're interested in a little bit more, Pewter Report Locker Room is changing the way we talk about sports. It's an app that is the only place for live audio conversations about the takes, rumors, news, and teams you care about. React to sports news as it happens, gather all your friends and watch parties for the biggest games, rep your favorite teams, and find your community. Better sports talk is just a tap away. Download on the Apple App Store and join the conversation. We have a lot of fun chats on there with fans, and you can get on and you can talk and say your 2 cents and ask a question, and we have a lot of good dialogue in there. They're really fun when we have those. So download that and follow Pewter Report on the Locker Room app. It's pretty fun stuff. Steven, man, thank you so much for joining us on today's show. This was a huge help. Can you tell the people where they can find you and any good work or anything like that you have going on right now that people should know about?
Yep, of course. So it's just my name, Stephen Cheah, on Twitter and Instagram. I work on the Going Deep podcast with Willie Colon and Joey Molinaro. We just had Aaron Jones on this week. We taped it right before his game against us, actually. And then we've got a couple really fun Buccaneers coming up. So Ryan Jensen, we talked to the other day. That's going to be coming out next week. That's a very fun interview. We're talking to Tristan Wirfs next week, which should be good. And it'll be, I think we're getting, we're also talking to Shady, Sean McCoy. And and then we got Shaq coming up in a couple of weeks. So
those are some good interviews right there.
A bunch of Buccaneers coming up on the Going Deep podcast, which should be really fun. That's just at Going Deep on Twitter and Instagram. And then the Yak on YouTube every day, 1 to 2 p.m. Big Cat hosts that show. I'm part of the show. Fun stuff. Just talking, kind of everyday stuff with a bunch of the Barstool guys. And just catch me just catching bodies out here on these Twitter streets with all these freezing cold Bucs takes.
I was literally about to close out with something just like that. Like out on these Twitter streets, watch out for Stephen Cheah, ladies and gentlemen. Vicious man for sure. So Stephen, really, really appreciate you coming on the show, man. We'll have to do it again sometime.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. So there you go, Stephen Cheah, ladies and gentlemen. That's it for us this week. The Pewter Report podcast. We will be back on Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and we'll have more awesome content to talk about. Until then, thanks so much for listening to another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.